What's up, comic book fans, and welcome to Comics Icons. Now, JJ, what they call me, and today we're going to be breaking down the first issue of Ultimate Universe by Jonathan Hickman. It's back, ladies and gentlemen. The Ultimate Universe is back. Well, sort of, at least. Now, I know a lot of readers grew up on the original Ultimate Universe, so I'm sure the return of this series means a lot to some people. Now, this issue has been out for a couple months already, so I'm breaking this down a bit later than my YouTube counterparts, since this dropped about a month before my channel started. But before I could get into the newer issues, I feel as though I need to get into this one first, so it all makes sense. And if you're looking for this one to be like the original, then beware, because it is quite different. So before I get into this issue, I need to catch you up a little bit. So earlier this year, Jonathan Hickman dropped a 4-issue miniseries called Ultimate Invasion, and that set up this new universe. And in that series, we saw the Maker escape from his captivity in the main Earth 616 and try to recruit Miles Morales to join him on this new journey, in which Miles refused. Then the Maker proceeded to gather the items he needed to build a way to travel the multiverse while simultaneously blocking any of the Earth 616 heroes from following him. And once he got to this new world, we saw that the first thing he did was go back in time and stop the radioactive spider from biting Peter Parker. And we realized that this universe was not gonna be like the original Earth 1610, in which the Maker originated from. But instead, this new Earth 6160 would be one in which the Maker controlled. And controlled he did. He ended up getting rid of most of the heroes while controlling others like the Hulk, Captain Britain, the Rasputins, and others. He even delayed the launch of the Fantastic Four so that they never got their powers. And then he made that Reed Richards into Dr. Doom. So, as the Maker worked with that Earth's version of Howard Stark on his Immortus engine to rule all of time, Howard Stark began to realize that the Maker wasn't who he thought he was. And with the help of this new Doom Richards, he was able to stop the Maker as well as a future version of Kang. So, in doing so, Stark was able to trap the Maker inside the Maker's new domed city that would remain locked for 2 years. But we seemingly lost Howard Stark in the process. But before completing the mission, Stark left a letter for his son Tony, which Doom Richards was able to deliver, and this letter basically explained what the Maker was doing. And at the end of that series, we saw Tony Stark, now suited up as Iron Lad and equipped with a piece of the Immortus engine, travel to find the site of a frozen Captain America at the behest of this letter. So now that brings us to this Ultimate Universe #1. And if you guys are ready to find out what happens next in this new universe, let's get it. So when this issue begins, we see Reed and Tony at a sale in Asgard, and Tony asks Reed if it's the one, in which Reed's like, yeah, it should be, but if it were me, I'd disguise my intentions, because you never know who's watching. But Tony's like, man, the sun will be up soon and we don't have much time, so it's a risk anyway. Just get him out. So Reed then peeks inside of this cell and asks if anyone is in there, in which this person responds to go away. I'm not trying to talk to anyone and I don't want food or drink since I've been branded a traitor. Then Reed tells him that he's here to open the cage of the wrongly imprisoned. And this guy is like, man, don't play with me. I don't have patience for lies. And then Reed opens the door and tells him this isn't a lie, that he's here to free the god of thunder and lightning. We then see that this guy is Thor. And Reed's like, we gotta get him. And Reed's like, we got him, Iron Lad. And Iron Lad is basically like, bet, ship's that way, let's bounce. But Thor turns in the other direction and tells them that he can't just leave yet. I have great need, and if my needs are met, then perhaps we will not need any vessel of yours. So now Tony's talking to Reed like, do you think this guy knows that I got $1 billion bleeding edge prototype? And Reed's like, nah, I don't. But he does seem unusually certain. And now Tony's like, what's better than $1 billion spaceship? And then we see Mjolnir, which is being guarded by Lady Sif, who sees Thor and is like, how the hell did you get out? I see you want some trouble, in which Thor's like, I just want what's mine and I can bounce and no longer be any of your concern. And then Sif tells him that the royal prisons are her domain, and if he escapes, then she will be to blame for it. So it kind of is her concern. So he needs to go back to his cell. And now Thor's like, look, I'm out of here and I'm leaving with what is mine. And now Sif is ready for a fight, and she tells Thor that if he wants Mjolnir so bad, then come and get it, traitor. Then Thor bosses up and says to her, has it been so long that Asgard has forgotten? I don't have to. And then he summons Mjolnir right to him, and now we see a fully powered up Thor. Then we see Reed look at Tony like, that is a very impressive weapon. Maybe even more so than your impressive ship. And Tony's like, well, what I want to know is if he can summon that thing at will, then why didn't he do it when he was in his cell? And Reed's like, well, given what we know, the only reason I can think of is he just didn't want to. And then Thor proceeds to thoroughly whoop the asses of the guards. And then he looks back to Reed and Tony and tells them, now we can leave. So Tony's now telling Thor that we gotta fight our way out now because of all the chaos. But it's our only way out. And Thor's like, nah, stand close to me. This may feel a little bit odd. And then he uses Mjolnir to open a Bifrost and teleport them up out of there. But we also see Lady Sif jump in to follow them. Then we transition over to New York at Stark Tower. And we see the three standing in front of a frozen Captain America. And they explain to Thor who he is, which kind of fires up Thor. And he tells them that he should be freed just as I was. And attempts to crack the ice with Mjolnir, but Tony stops him. Then we find out that Tony doesn't want to take the risk of cracking the ice and something going wrong, which Reed disagrees with. Reed's like, I think we should go ahead and do it. But they decide to hold off on that. Then Thor asks if he can hear them, in which Tony isn't really sure about it. So Thor says that there are words that should be said, and he says to the frozen Cap, hear me, brother. I would free you now, as I would any in chains who deserve them not. Were the risk not grave and the cost so high. But you have my word. Should the time come when such a choice must be made, you will be freed. Better to die as such than helpless and hopeless, trapped in a frozen hell. Then we see Lady Sif, who had followed them through the Bifrost, and she tells Thor that promising freedom when you don't have your own seems disingenuous. So this is when Tony lets both Sif and Thor in on a little bit of news. That things are not as they should be. That the world as they know it is a lie. And that Thor isn't supposed to be your prisoner. He's supposed to be your king. And so now Thor's like, wait a minute. What do you mean I'm supposed to be king? And Reed explains the situation and who the Maker is. And that while the Maker is trapped in this city of the future, they have an opportunity to set things right. Then he tells them that the Maker came from a different universe with one mission: to systematically erase this world's heroes from existence. He was able to do this by denying them the circumstances and events that would have transformed them into what they were supposed to be. And he was able to do that because he arrived in our universe with the knowledge of the history of our Earth's heroes. So Sif is now like, how could you know such a thing? And Reed tells her that when he was the Maker's prisoner, he was able to steal his files. So I know what he knows. And then Tony chimes in and says, you were supposed to be king of Asgard, Thor. Instead, he helped your brother Loki kill your father and steal your birthright. We want to set things right. Will you help us? And Thor is like, bet, I'm with you. And then Tony asks Sif the same question, and she's like, I'll stick around for the ride. So then Reed tells the group that he realized that the reference numbers to each entry in the files were actually storage codes to a repository where he keeps his trinkets to each hero he has wronged, and that the repository is located in the capital city of Latveria, and then shows them a hologram of the fortress, in which Sif responds, I know nothing of earthly fortresses, but I know a well-built citadel when I see one. They will not simply let you walk in there and take it. And then Tony's like, true, but if only we had some way to get there magically and in the blink of an eye. So then Thor portals them all to Latveria, and there they see what they're looking for. And when Reed goes to input the code to let down the shield, it doesn't work. Then Reed realizes that no active codes will work when the Maker's city is closed. And then now there's no quiet way to get in there. But Thor is like, I am the god of thunder. I have never concerned myself much with quiet. And then he uses lightning and gets them inside. So when they get in, Tony notices that there are no alarms or guards and that maybe Reed was wrong. But Reed's like, that's doubtful. But the mission remains unchanged. To escape with the repository. And Tony realizes how many containers are in there. And he starts to get a little bit doubtful. And he tells Reed that that might not be as simple as we thought. Then Sif is like, you say each of these contains the relics of a stolen life? And Reed's like, nah, each one has around 100. So Tony asks Thor if they gather all the containers together, can Thor jump them out with all of the containers? And Thor replies, it's an evil thing, the stealing of dreams, the work of demons and devils and souls that are damned. To make a world where men are chained to a future that is not their own. Obscenity. Can I do it? I am a god, and not bound by the limits of men. Of course I can. And in that moment, Thor is stabbed in the back. Then we see that it's Captain Britain, who begins kicking all their asses and tells them that there are consequences for crime in the capital city, and today he's their judge. So then Tony battles Captain Britain, and Captain Britain is able to knock the mask off to see that it is in fact Tony Stark. And then Captain Britain's like, I know that face. And then Stark's like, I want you to remember it. Then he puts his blaster right up to the face of Captain Britain and straight up blasts him. Then he asks Thor if he's able to get them out of there, in which he does, and they're able to get one of those containers back with him to Stark Tower. And when they get there, Tony activates emergency protocols, but he's never used it before and doesn't quite know if it'll work in healing Thor. But it starts up. Meanwhile, Reed opens the container and realizes that it's a cryogenic device meant to preserve whatever it holds. And inside, the first thing he finds is the radioactive spider. Wink, wink. So then we transition back over to Latveria, and a now one-eyed Captain Britain is alerting all the heads of the Maker's Council about what happened. That Stark and his companions broke into the castle and escaped with the Maker's lure. So then they at first think he's crazy because Howard Stark was inside the city, and Captain Britain's like, no, not the father, the son. And that's when the diabolical Hulk gets an idea and tells the captain, we regret the loss of your eye, Captain, but we have all been wondering exactly how to deal with the vacuum of power on that continent and claim it for ourselves. I now see a path forward. He does not know it, but the boy has given us North America. All we have to do is take it. And Captain Britain asks Hulk how has he done that? And Hulk responds, by committing the acts of a tyrant, or worse, those of a terrorist. And what do acts of terror yield? Opportunity. Then we simultaneously see Stark and the crew as Reed notices that something is wrong, and Tony's like, targeting alert from near Earth orbit? That doesn't make any sense. Unless, oh no. Then Reed tells Tony that options are limited with the Asgardian field. Perhaps only one. And Tony's like, yeah, I know. And then we see his piece of the Immortus engine firing up just as the tower is being fired upon. Then we go back over to Captain Britain, and he's asking the Hulk how they'll sell this. And Hulk tells him, we do what we do. We tell lies so large that it's inconceivable that they are fabricated or false. And we cover that with just enough truth to sell it. We put his name on it, Stark. And Britain's like, you think people will believe it when we blame the boy? And Hulk replies, of course they will. After all, while it's true that we are the ones who had control of the machines, it was his family who built them. Then in the epilogue, we see 1 week later, and there's a news broadcast that says, against the backdrop of global concern and international aid, it is with gratitude and great sorrow that we do our best to reflect on the events of last week. And while all of us here and millions around the world still wait for answers about what happened that day, for now, all we have are questions. Thousands remain missing, and while almost no physical evidence remains, local and international agencies using GPS, digital IDs, and other forensic data have been able to create a database of unfortunate souls who may have been in the blast radius of the terror attack. Below me, those potential victims' names are scrolling on the screen. People who, according to both the data and the experts who analyzed it, were believed to have been near the corporate headquarters of Stain and Stark when the event occurred. Authorities need all the help they can get, so anyone who can confirm or deny any of these names, please contact them immediately. So then the reporter mentions that these events aren't contained to our borders. And then elsewhere they show that a car explosively collided with a bicycle in the streets, and while the driver remains in serious condition, the 15-year-old girl who was hit by the car escaped without a scratch on her. And that elsewhere, there are reports of an outbreak of regional infighting and perhaps open insurgents. And that due to the volatile nature of the conflict and an accompanying media blackout, there's been very little available coverage of the events. All that we have, we're sharing with you now, and we will keep you updated as we learn more. And just as a side note, make sure you guys are checking out some of these names that are scrolling across the screen of this news report, some of which include Emily Osborne, Norman Osborn, and May Parker, to name a few. And we also get a quick little silhouette of what looks to be the Black Panther. But then the reporter continues on, stating, finally, we end tonight's coverage with the biggest underlying mystery regarding the recent terror attack. Why would a teenage boy commit this terrible act? Some have suggested that it was because of his father and godfather's recent passing. Others have assumed that it was simple madness. We will continue to try to find answers to these questions, but as Tony Stark is believed to have been in the blast, it is safe to assume that he too has perished. And it's very possible we may never know why he did it. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of the issue. Wow. To think, this is just the beginning of this new Ultimate Universe. A lot went down in this issue, and if you're still watching to this point, see if you can recognize any of the other names that were mentioned in the news broadcast. Y'all know Jonathan Hickman likes to plant the seeds early on of what's to come later. And I think that mention of the 15-year-old girl that walked away from the car crash is mutant related. So I'm sure that'll come back up later. But ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to show this channel some support, please help a brother out and drop a like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more icons in the comic book world. But y'all know what time it is. I'm out this thing. Peace.